All right. So everybody, our presentation today is about teaching with dialogues and role plays. And we use these dialogues and role plays as sort of stepping stones or scaffolding to help our students build upon so that they can do full-blown conversations on their own. I want to thank the folks at proliteracy.org for their webinar on this topic, where that really helped me in putting this together. And I'm going to be showing you how we can use the Light of the World materials and expand upon them and help our students learn to communicate clearly and comfortably on their own. So first of all, I'm going to talk about dialogues. So dialogues in every Light of the World lesson, part 3, we have what are called conversations. And these are usually written dialogues with 2 parts, A and B. And sometimes we use cards, the A card and the B card, so we know who is speaking. So one person takes the role of A, the other person takes the role of B. And these are the most structured way to begin practicing conversation, because all the words are planned out in advance and they're written down. So the students know exactly what to say. They don't have to worry about finding the right words, struggling to get the right word. They just have to read or repeat what is on the dialogue conversation in front of them. So these are great because they're low stress. You don't have to get all nervous about it like you do when you're making a public presentation and you have to think, okay, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What if I don't understand them? It's low stress, so it's very comfortable. We can use it at all ability levels, from low beginners all the way up. And it helps our students to practice the specific vocabulary that they're learning, the correct word order, and also the sentence structure. So the conversations in our Light of the World materials are usually structured so that it uses the key vocabulary words that they're learning in that unit, in addition to the key grammatical structures. And we put those together, the grammar and the vocabulary, to form sentences. So here's an example of one of our dialogues from the A1 level. Person A says, "What do you like to do in your free time?" And person B, "I like to exercise and play soccer. What do you like to do?" And then A says again, "I like to watch movies and practice English. Would you like to watch a movie now?" "No, I'd rather go outside. It's a beautiful day. Let's go to the park." Great idea. Okay, so this is a very simple conversation. It's using some of the grammar that we're learning, the would like, would you like? No, I would rather go outside. So it's using that grammar, and it's also using the lesson theme activities, which are pastimes like playing soccer, watching movies, going to the park. So you'll notice that in these dialogues, some of the words are black and some of the words are blue. And the blue words are words that the students can swap out and replace with their own words. And so they don't have to do that. But if you have a multi-level class, as many of us do, you could have the beginning students just do the dialogue exactly as it's written. But the more advanced students, you could challenge them to give their own real answers. So maybe they don't like to exercise and play soccer, for example. I don't. maybe they like to read books and go kayaking. So they would substitute the words that apply to them for the blue words. So that's one way that we can build upon these standard dialogues that are found in each lesson. Here's another example. And so often these dialogues will reflect everyday conversations, everyday life. And in this case, it's reflecting going to a grocery store and paying for your groceries. So A says, hello, do you want to pay with cash or credit card? Credit card. Okay, the total is $59.17. Would you like a receipt? Yes, please. Do you want paper or plastic bags? No, thank you. We have our own bags. Great, thanks for shopping with us. You're welcome. Have a nice day. Okay, so this is a typical conversation you might hear in a North American supermarket. And you can always change these things to be specific to your region. So, for example, if in your area people don't use credit cards, maybe they use mobile phone payments, maybe they don't use paper bags, maybe they only use plastic bags, whatever it is, you can change that and modify it to fit what students will really hear in your environment. And finally, we're going to take a look at this one and break it down a little bit further. So this is from one of the chapters on health. How do you feel today? I don't feel well. And remember, as you're doing these dialogues, it can really help if you kind of act them out, right? So if you can say, how do you feel today? I don't feel well, right? And then you're holding your head because you've got a headache. I don't feel well. Oh no, what's wrong? My head hurts. I have a headache. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you need aspirin? Yes, thank you. Okay, so it can be really funny. You're going to have some students who really get into this and like to ham it up, as we say. They put a lot of drama and emotion into it, and we laugh and laugh. We have so much fun doing these conversations sometimes. So as you can see here, there are some blue words. And as you can also see here, we have a picture that shows other ailments you could possibly have. So what we can do with this after we act it out and we go through it a few times, just the standard way with the words as written, we can, if you want, you can delete those blue words and put blanks in them. You could ask students to, write the words that they want in there. So for example, we could look at picture number 2 and say, okay, class, I'm going to let you guys answer this. Okay, class, in picture number 2, it's my blank hurts. I have blank. What do you think is the problem in picture number 2? Can anybody tell me? And you guys can unmute yourself if you know the answer. So in the second picture, what is the problem? What hurts?
Stomach.
Right, my stomach hurts. I have, and does anyone know the word? What do we call it when our stomach hurts? I have a
Stomach ache.
Yes, very good, Linda. I have a stomach ache. So my stomach hurts. I have a stomach ache. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you need? So what is something we could give a person who has a stomach ache? What might help them if they have a stomach ache? In your country, what do you do when someone has a stomach ache?
We give him aspirin.
You give him aspirin. Okay. So we can say, I'm sorry to hear that. Do you need aspirin? Yes, thank you. Okay. So that's one way to do it, to elicit answers. Now, another thing we can do is kind of put a chart up on the board with the 3 blanks we need to fill in. So we can brainstorm with the class about different parts of our body that can be malfunctioning. So here you can see we did stomach, and we call that a stomach ache. And then what can help? Yeah, and stomach is one of those strange words because usually the CH makes the sh sounds. It should be stomach, but it's not. We pronounce it like a K. So it's stomach and stomach ache. That CH also makes the K sound. Stomach ache.
And that's hard here to say that.
Stomach ache. Yeah, stomach ache. And then we can talk about what can help. And this is always fun because people have different remedies in different countries. So it might be aspirin, it might be tea, you might go to the doctor. And so then we'll have other things, backache, what can help? We can put in other parts of the body and other problems. And these are great also for having cultural conversations. I know one of the things, when we've done this in my classes, we talk about hiccups. You know what a hiccup, when you go, oop, hiccup. And we talked about remedies, and I say, well, for me, in my family, when we have the hiccups, we take a spoonful of sugar and swallow that, and that makes the hiccups go away. And then other people say, oh no, when you have the hiccups, you have to surprise someone, scare them, and their hiccups go away. Or people say, no, you have to hold your breath. The strangest one I ever heard was somebody said, in our country, when you have the hiccups, you take a piece of red thread and you put it in water so it's wet, and you stick it on your forehead, and that makes the hiccups go away. So, but then people get excited about this, sharing their different remedies. So we can fill out this chart with the class. And then if we go back here, if they can't remember what to say, they can look at the chart and fill in those words. So that's another thing we can do with dialogues. And you can also create your own dialogues. So we have dialogues in the Light of the World materials, but your students may have situations in their lives that are coming up that they want to know how to communicate in. And you can create a personalized dialogue for your class based on their students' lives, on your students' lives. For example, maybe your student has to make a doctor's appointment and they're nervous. They don't know how to talk on the phone asking for an appointment. You can practice that language with a dialogue. Or taking your car to the mechanic and explaining the problem you have with your car. Talking to your child's teacher about how your kid is doing in school. Asking for a raise. So I've helped many of my students with this, where they had to ask their boss if they could speak to them, and then we would talk about, you know, I've been working here for 2 years now, and I've been a very good worker. I have very good attendance, and I would like to have a raise. So those are very hard conversations to have, even in your own language. And so practicing and going through those as dialogues is a good way to give them the vocabulary and structures they need. Okay, so those are some ideas, but let your students tell you what they need in their real lives and create a dialogue for them. When we write a dialogue, it's really simple, right? We're just going to put A, B, A, B. And we want to use natural language, what they're likely to hear. So sometimes when we're writing, we will write very formally. For example, we might write something like, how may I help you? And sometimes people will say, how may I help you? But sometimes they just say, what do you need? Or what can I do for you? Or other options. So try to use the natural language that students are likely to hear in their given situation and match the length to their skill level. So if they are beginners, you just want to have maybe 3 or 4 exchanges between A and B. Don't make it too long because that's going to be too much for them to take in. And again, brainstorm the vocabulary and questions with the class. What are some questions you want to ask your doctor? What are questions that a car mechanic might ask you? Keep the sentences short. We don't talk in paragraphs. We usually just talk in short sentences. And so little sentences or even sentence fragments are fine. So many times we don't say, yes, I do have a headache today. We just say, yes, and that's fine. And as with everything we teach, keep it useful. Choose situations that are relevant to your students' lives. If you are teaching children, you probably don't need to do asking your boss for a raise or asking a teacher about your children's school because you're a kid, you don't have those situations. So feel free to make it adapted to your own students. Now, role plays are a little bit different than dialogues. They're a little more free form. So instead of having every single word written out, we usually give the students just an outline or a situation, and they have to fill in some of the words on their own. And so these role plays are great for higher level skill building. In many of the Light of the World lessons for activity 6B, we will have a role play. This can help them develop spontaneity in speaking. It helps them to speak in the moment instead of having something memorized ahead of time. It helps them to build confidence in unfamiliar situations. And students can either perform the role of themselves and give true answers about themselves, or you can have them play the part of a different person. So those are some of the options we have in role plays. Here's an example. This comes from the part 6 activities in one of our lessons. So this is a role play between 2 people. There's a customer and a cashier at a store. And each student has a different slide to look at. So the person who's going to play the part of the cashier is only allowed to look at this slide. And the person playing the part of the customer is only allowed to look at this slide, okay? And so some of the information is provided, like we have some questions that they can ask to get them started, but then we don't have the answers to those questions. They have to make up the answers. So for example, the cashier says, "Can I help you?" And then the person who's playing the customer has to come up with something like, "Yes, I want to buy a black dress." Or yes, I need to buy bread or whatever it is. They have to decide what that is. And then based on those things, they're going to try having this conversation back and forth. So like, do you want to try on that dress? Do you know that all of our hats are 50% off? Do you need a shopping cart? Did you find everything you needed? Do you have any questions? So again, we have the questions here, but the other person has to make up answers on their own, on the spot. So this is a little more challenging. If this is too challenging for your students and they're not able to do this, you can have them sit down and write out the answers ahead of time so that they can just read those off of the slide when their time comes. So you can always adapt these materials to make it easier or harder for your particular group of students. Okay. Now here's another role play that I have done. So I used to teach in manufacturing plants in Chicago, and we would usually teach 10-week classes. And at the end of the 10 weeks, we would have a party. And the students could decide what kind of party they wanted to have for their graduation. And sometimes we would have a potluck where everybody would bring a different dish. And I really enjoyed that a lot because I got to try foods from really good homemade food from different cultures. However, especially for the women in the class, because they worked all day and they were tired. And the idea of having to prepare a meal and pay for that and bring it to class was often stressful for them. Many times they would say, could we just order pizza and have the company pay for it? So that was a popular option for our graduations. And so I would say, yes, we can order pizza, but you know what? You guys have to make the phone call and order the pizza. And so that was often very scary. As you know, speaking on the phone in a new language is a lot more challenging than doing it in person. Because in person, you can see their face, you can see their gestures, you can know if they are confused or if they understand you. You can point to things. You can say, I want this, even if you don't know the name of this. But on the phone, you don't have any of that. You just have audio. And so in preparation for ordering a pizza, we did this exercise in class. So we would try to predict what are some words and questions you are likely to hear when you order a pizza. So we would start out with things like, hello, Tony's Pizza, can I help you? Except in real life, you know what? It's a lot faster than that. They say, hello, Tony's Pizza, may I help you? But we would practice that so they would know what to expect. Yes, I'd like to order a pizza for delivery. What kind of pizza would you like? I'd like, and then we talk about all the different types of pizza. Do we want thick crust or thin crust? Do we want tomatoes or meat or everything? So we would vote on all of the toppings we want. Then they would probably ask, you know, how would you like to pay for that? They would ask, what is your address? And you have to tell them the address where you want it delivered. They would probably tell you how long it's going to take. You know, that might be 1 hour. So we would just brainstorm what are some likely things that could happen in this conversation. And then we practiced it a lot with different people in the class playing part of the employee, different people playing the part of the customer until they felt confident to do it for real. Okay. So that's another another way we can use a role play. Now, a final way that we can use role plays is for acting out our Bible stories. So this is an example from one of the lessons where we read about Philip and the important official from Ethiopia, the Ethiopian eunuch. And if you remember the story, and the students will remember this story because we just read it in class, the important official was riding along in a chariot pulled by horses and was reading the scriptures. And Philip saw him and ran up beside him and helped him to interpret what he was reading. So after we've read this story and we're familiar with it, we can have one person play the part of Philip and the other one play the part of the important official. And again, this is fun if you can get into it, right? So Philip's running and running, trying to catch up. And the other guy, he can have a Bible that he's looking at and reading it. And so some of the questions that Philip can ask is, do you know what you are reading? And then we'll remember from the story, the man said, no, how can I know unless someone explains it to me? And Philip might say, who are you? And he'll say, oh, well, I'm an important official. I work for, I forgot who it was, Candace, someone like that. And where are you going? And how do you feel? So he can ask some questions. Some of these they can answer directly from the Bible story. Some of them they can kind of make up according to how they feel it happened. And so by doing this, it really makes the Bible story come alive. Other ones that we have acted out, one of them that's always fun to do is the story of Mary and Martha. So we can brainstorm after we read that story. We can brainstorm because if you remember, Martha was very busy making preparations for the party that was going to happen. And Mary wasn't helping her at all. She was just sitting there talking to Jesus. And so we could make a list. What are some things that maybe Martha is doing? What are some things you do to get ready to have people over for dinner? And then we can, write out, maybe she has to clean the house. She has to bake the bread. She has to set the table. So all of that would be vocabulary that we've practiced. And then we can talk about Mary. She's sitting and talking to Jesus. So what do you think they are talking about? And if you had a chance to sit down and talk to Jesus, what are some questions you would ask him? What are some things you would want to talk about with Jesus? And so we can kind of fill in the blanks for some of those things and then give them those different roles and have them play it out. So this works well for a lot of Bible stories where we can have them acted out, have them really get into the situation and imagine what it was like and what they might say. So I'm going to ask, so how about you guys? For question number one, what are some real world scenarios your students face outside of class? So are there things that your students face at work or in the market or in other places that would be a good topic for a dialogue or role play? And you guys can unmute yourselves if you have some ideas.
In the courtroom.
Oh, in the courtroom. Yes, that is a great one because there's very specific language that they use in the court, and you want to, you know, the judge does things like hits his gavel and says, "Order in the court," or "Please rise," which might be language you don't hear a lot in other places. And if you have a speeding ticket and you have to explain why you were speeding or whatever the situation is, you want to make sure you know how to say it correctly. Great example, Pat. Any others?
Another example. At the beach. Say it loud.
At the beach.
At the beach?
Yes.
Okay, at the beach. So that's a situation where you're at the beach and you may need to talk about that. And is it safe to go in the water? And do you want to come to the beach with me? And yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so think about those things and ask your students what they are interested in. Another one a lot of times is things like driving tests. I know Tanya had a student, she was helping to get his driver's license, and there's language that you need to know when you take your driving test.
Yeah, I was thinking about a couple of my students just moved into a new area, so like where things are and how to operate the laundry room, coin machine or something like that too. So yeah, just like encountering a new person and some things that you can talk about with that new person.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Very good.
On a trip.
Okay, taking a trip. Right. So when you're taking a trip, there's all kinds of language you may need for buying your tickets and maybe staying in a hotel or getting directions. Yeah, those are all great ones.
One I heard recently too was, and you'll remember, Melina, is ordering coffee at McDonald's. So ordering food at fast food.
Yeah, ordering fast food. Yeah, and so many of these things we take for granted can be really challenging for our students to try to do. So let me ask you, what has been your experience of using the role plays and dialogues from the Light of the World books with your students?
John Otto wants to answer.
Okay, go ahead, John. Speak up loudly so we can hear you.
No, as I always mention about the Light of the World curriculum, it is a very great material, and the documentations are very helpful whenever we are teaching students. It helps them to see the image and then understand, and they are quickly able to master the document. So it's very helpful.
Okay, great. So it's been helpful to use those and have that language. Nice. And has anyone used Bible stories with role plays or acting out the Bible stories?
Not yet.
Yes,
But maybe
I use
now.
Bible story also, yes.
Oh, you do, Pastor
Yeah.
Tan? Okay.
Yes, sharing short Bible story just to understand, because of mostly focus on unbeliever, whether they believe or not, just I'm sharing for them.
Yeah, so especially when you're sharing with unbelievers and people who are not familiar, it can be really helpful to share these stories and act them out so they can understand them well. Wonderful. Okay, well, I am going to stop recording now, but we will continue to see if there's any more questions.